Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing another torture test video, finally, on some magazines. Now these magazines I'm going to be doing are the MP5 mags here from KCI. I've recently done a thorough video giving you my thoughts on them. And in that video, I mentioned that I wanted to do a torture test just to see how they would handle the elements, very similar to the AR-15 torture test videos I've done so far and will continue to do. And I mentioned that I had two more still left in the package, so I could give them as fair of a chance as possible. And thankfully, KCI, once they saw that last video, said, hey, we will supply you with the ammo to do a torture test. So I thought that was awesome. A company that's willing to provide you ammo to torture their magazines, I feel like probably have a little bit of confidence. So we'll see how they do. This will be the first time I've done an all-metal magazine. All the AR-15 mags I've done so far have been at least somewhat polymer. So should be interesting to see how an all-metal body magazine handles this torture test. So I'm going to try to avoid doing too much dialoguing regarding these since I've already done a couple videos. If you want to know more about my philosophy on these tests, definitely check out those other videos. But suffice to say, I know that the test that I'm about to run these through is not a comprehensive torture test. You just can't do that with the number of rounds I have. I just have several hundred rounds through these other magazines, so this will be more of an elements test, I guess. But elements test doesn't sound as fun as torture test. So without any further ado, I'm just going to go ahead, load this thing up fully loaded, and run it just to ensure proper function, and then we'll go on from there. The ammo that KCI provided me for this test is this prime ammo. Probably should have held this side towards you, not that you can see it anyway. It's 124 grain full metal jacket ammo. Everything I've seen about prime ammo has been positive, so I have no reason to doubt that this ammo will function through these magazines or through this MP5. I do want to point out though that while ordinarily when I've done this with AR-15s, I do the magazines the benefit of having a fully clean rifle just to eliminate as many variables as possible. I have not done that with this MP5, which just for specifics is the Zenith Z5P, which I hesitate to call an MP5 clone just because it's as close as you can get to HK without it being stamped HK on it. I haven't cleaned the Zenith, and that's because it's still going through its review process as well, and it's done well over 1,000 rounds uncleaned, and I want to leave it uncleaned for the review just to see how well it's going to run. So if anything, this will add to the talking points in that video once we get some dirt and water and everything else through these tests. So I'm going to finish loading out the last 10 rounds here, if I can do my math properly. I think that's correct. And then we'll get started with the testing on these mags. All right, so we got 30 rounds of the prime ammo loaded into this brand new magazine. Loaded, that's always a good sign. Let's go ahead, just put 30 rounds down range, make sure everything's going to function. If not, I do have a backup magazine, but given my experience so far, things should be fine. So let's go ahead and get started here. All right, and just FYI, these are not going to lock open. These HK designs are not supposed to lock open, but we have an empty mag. So 30 rounds down. Let's go ahead and get into the water test. So I have my little bowl of water here. This is a new one, same as the other test, but it's a nice and clean one. 10 rounds loaded up into the magazine. So we'll go ahead and submerge it. Hopefully, this magazine's kind of long. I want to try to get all the air bubbles out of it. So I have about 2 liters of water in here. I'm just going to add a little bit more just to make sure we get this thing fully submerged. All right. This just means we'll have to add more dirt later just to keep things fair. So I guess, yeah, all right. So I guess it's full. Oh, I wasn't thinking that it was coming out of the witness holes on the bottom. All right. So we have all the air bubbles out of it now. I'm going to move the camera back just so we can watch me take it straight out into the gun and then go down range. All right, so coming straight out of the water into the gun and 10 rounds. Just to make sure. All right, so again, it's not supposed to lock open. drained a lot of water out. I'm sure, I'm surprised it didn't come back on me, because I'm sure a lot of water was coming out of these witness holes. But as I expected, another non-issue. So let's go ahead and step it up with some dirt. So here we have our patented cup of dirt. Just going to dump it in here. This is going to be a lot finer than some of the ones that I've done in the past, which just basically there's fewer sticks and fewer like pieces of grass and stuff. So this is going to be more dirt, which is I think a good thing, because hopefully more of that will be able to get into the magazine and prevent the rounds from feeding on top of each other. So I'm just going to stir this up a bit, get it nice and dissolved in here. Then we'll load up this mag and let it soak. All right, so now that we got 20 rounds in here, I'm just going to use this to help stir up that sediment at the bottom. Again, just want to make sure as much of it is into this water as possible, and get a lot of dirt inside the magazine. We'll just let it go under here. And unlike before, again, because we have those witness holes, it's allowing that dirty water in through more than just the top. So we'll see if this is going to mess up that follower. And because it only has 20 rounds, that follower is going to be in a different spot than if it was full, which means that potentially there could be more ingress in and around that follower area to maybe stop it up. So we're pretty well inundated. So I'm going to pull the camera back, pull it out, and shoot it. So again, we're just going to pull it straight out, throw it in, and send the rounds down range. Alright, all 20 rounds. That's pretty nasty. I'm thinking that fluted chamber probably even helps if any of that dirt's on the round itself, still lets it go into battery. So, alright, let's do the next test. So we have 15 rounds loaded in. The next test, I'm just going to stir this up. A lot of it's settled, so I want to make sure it's back up in the water itself. And again, give it a chance to get into those feed lips a bit. After we let it soak and get all the dirt in there, what we're going to do is leave it out in the sun. Hopefully let it dry and get nice and crusty in there and increase the likelihood of it getting locked up. And then we'll run it after that and see how it does. So I think that's pretty safe to say it's nice and crusty. Let's just go. Just gonna toss this out in the dirt and go from there. And none of the rounds popped out, so that's a good thing. So while we let that magazine dry in the sun, I figured for any of you interested, I'd go over how this Z5P is currently set up. So right now we have a SB Tactical brace back here. It is a side folding brace, which is pretty sweet. I have one of the Midwest Industries QD mounts for the SB Tactical braces, so that's pretty sweet. Right now we have the Midwest Industries optic rail on here, which has a Vortex Venom inside the Rex skeleton from Strike Industries. And then we have a Streamlight ProTac Rail 1 light mounted with a Midwest Industries offset mount. And then we have a Midwest Industries handguard on here. Other than that, everything else is stock trigger, stock everything else, safety, etc. I'm liking the way this thing's set up, but you'll know more about that when I do my review on this Z5P, which will be coming soon. The main thing I wanted to do was run it suppressed, which I did prior to the KCI magazine review. So I'm liking this thing a lot, though. Be looking out for the review on this thing. So you have to excuse the GoPro you just saw there. I wanted to get some slow-mo footage of this thing shooting. I'm not going to move it, but you can see we got a lot of gunk here on the top of the magazine. And again, I want to try to do this without messing that up. You can hopefully hear how gritty this sounds. Yeah, still plenty messy up there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get it in the gun and see if we run through all the rounds without any problems. All right, there we go. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and do the drop test. First, floor plate down. I'm going to drop it from about shoulder height. I'm about 6'2" for what that's worth. Then I got a camera down at my feet to hopefully capture if anything interesting happens, which I don't anticipate, although given that it is all metal, if the feed lips bend, that'll be an interesting talking point. So without any further ado, floor plate down first. Holy shit. Well, interesting. Follower and rounds are still in the gun. All right, so I can genuinely say I was not expecting that. All the rounds stayed in. I was expecting, if anything, maybe a round or two will pop out. Follower is still in there, but it shot the floor plate off. Spring went flying. Took us a couple minutes to find it. So, very interesting. I'm going to go ahead, put this back together, and continue the drop test. If that happens every time we do something, I don't know. Again, was not expecting that at all. All right, well, got it finally back together. So, I have 20 rounds in here, which is increasing the weight of it, but I did not expect that to happen. Anyway, we got it back together, so we'll keep on going. So I'm going to drop it spine down, rounds facing up, again from about shoulder height. All right. Whew, glad it didn't break apart. That was a pain. All right. No, just a little bit of blemishing on the spine. I'll go ahead and take a picture once this is all done. Looks like it did dent one of these ears, but let's keep going. Side down. Nothing crazy there. Now feed lips are the rounds facing down. Okay, nothing too crazy. And then, yeah, okay, so this time feed lips down. This is what I expected to be the hardest part. So hopefully nothing comes flying apart on me again this time. Thank God. All right. So what we'll go ahead and do is snap some pictures. Actually, I'll just go ahead and run through this mag, then we'll snap some pictures because I have a friend that's going to help me with the run over part. So the only thing I might be concerned about is if the feed lips got crimped, but let's see if it runs through these 20 rounds. All right, ran through all the rounds. So I'm going to take some close-up pictures, then we'll run into the run over test. All right, so what we're going to do now is run it over. I have my friend's FJ Cruiser here, which is thankfully heavier than my Honda Civic. We're just going to lay it out. I'm going to have him run over it maybe once or twice widthwise, then once or twice lengthwise, and we'll take it right back onto the range and shoot it. Again, this is loaded up to 20 rounds, so it has a little bit of something in there to help keep its shape, but given that this is all steel, I think it should do okay, but let's go ahead and see. Okay, so it looked like it handled it pretty well. This time I actually flipped it over to make sure each side gets a share, you know. So it's definitely got scuff marks on the sides that were down against the concrete on pretty much every side. But it didn't shed any rounds, which is a first. All the polymer mags, AR-15 mags I've tested, all shed rounds. So what I'm curious about is, did it crimp the feed lips enough to prevent this thing from feeding? So let's find out. Oh, very interesting. So it did not want to feed. Let's try that again. Looks like the feed lips might be a little tighter than they started. Interesting. We'll just leave that first round off. Let it feed from the right side first. Yeah, it's not wanting to feed. I'm thinking those feed lips look tighter. Oh, man. If it doesn't do this one, then nope, won't go into full battery. So let me download it if you get some of that pressure off. Just out of curiosity. It's not into full battery. So it seems that if you want to kill these mags, run them over with an FJ Cruiser. So just for grins and giggles, even though this mag is no longer functional, let's go ahead and finish off this the way I like to finish off these videos and shoot this thing. Alright, so to make sure my round impacts safely into the berm, I'm going to shoot from down here. I got another KCI mag, one that I have not torture tested. Let's go ahead and see if I can hit this magazine. 10 feet I should be able to, but we'll see. Alright, let's see what happened. I was kind of curious to see what would happen since this is the first all-metal magazine I've tested, this one being all steel, and a pretty interesting result. So entrance hole is right here. I hit pretty far forward on the magazine, which means that I missed the follower entirely, which I'll get to here in a second. Exit wound side obviously blew out a little bit more. Bent a lot of that steel out. I'll take some close-up pictures once we're all done here. But I think, again, because we missed the follower, as long as the follower doesn't go down to this spot, because where the entrance is, it bent steel in, so I think that would stop the follower's travel down. I think that if we could bend these feed lips back out, which we might try to do, we could get it to feed maybe 10 or so rounds, again, as long as that follower doesn't go past this spot. So what we might go ahead and try to do is bang this thing back apart and then see if we can't get this to still feed with this blown out. All right, so I have it loaded up with 15 rounds. I've tried bending the feed lips back apart. We'll see if it's enough to actually get this thing to feed or not. So far, so good. All right, so maybe a couple minutes with my little EDC pliers here, my Leatherman Juice, we're able to get this thing running again, even with this being shot to pieces. So I'm fairly confident, You could load this thing to 15, 20 rounds, even with it being shot, and it'll still function just fine. I like that. All right, so I'm going to try to wrap up my thoughts about these KCI mags. All in all, I'm pretty happy. I was really bummed that when I dropped that floor plate first, that it kind of exploded and sent rounds all over the place. Not exactly ideal. However, I really don't know how common that is with these steel mags. This is the first time I've tested one. So I'm kind of curious, testing out some MKE or HK mags and see how they run being dropped floor plate first. And, you know, I might have hit it just right. If I were to do it again, it might do something different. But all in all, I'm fairly happy that even though getting it run over bent the feed lips, after just a minute or two with a pair of really small pliers, we were able to get it functioning again. And it still ran even with this big old gunshot here. Now, if I had hit the spring, obviously things would be different, but as is, I'm pretty impressed. We had no feeding issues up until running it over, which is really kind of the most important thing, because how likely is it that you're gonna have a magazine run over? So all this does is really makes me want to test out some of the other MP5 mags on the market. And I know ETS just started making MP5 mags, so I'm curious how their all polymer mags would run. So if you'd like to see any of those videos, definitely let me know. Ideally, support me on Patreon so I can afford to go buy a couple $70 HK or MKE mags. But yeah, if you liked this one, definitely check out my AR-15 magazine torture test. I plan on picking those up again here soon with some aluminum D&H mags, because the video that's gotten the worst feedback, quote unquote, is the hex mags, because people love their cheap stuff to work, and when you tell them their cheap stuff doesn't work, they don't like it. So what I'd like to do is show you a magazine that's even cheaper, i.e. the D&H aluminum mags, that runs way more reliably than hex mags, and hopefully we can demonstrate that on camera, but we'll see about that. So anyway, as I mentioned, I do have a Patreon page. I upload all my content there early, as well as doing some exclusive content. We do live streams, giveaway, etc. So if that interests you, definitely check out my Patreon page. And I am also uploading to Full30 now, so I would recommend subscribing over there in case something crazy happens here on YouTube. At least you can follow what's going on over there on Full30. So anyway, with all that said, as always, I hope you're able to get something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.